be your everything, your blue sky.
Welcome to the Professional Stepdad Show. I'm your host, Franco Zavala. Thank you guys very much for joining me. This is episode 190 of the show. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is your 190th time here, welcome back. Today's episode is going to be focused specifically on you. That's why I've tentatively titled the episode, Be Honest with Yourself. This is an important one today, gentlemen, because this is something that I was not doing. I was not being honest with myself. I felt that I was making progress as a stepdad, as a husband, as a leader, as a mentor. I'm on top of my game. I've got a podcast. I've got pretty decent following on social media. But I wasn't being fully honest with not only who I am as an individual, but some of the things that I was holding on to that has limited my growth as a man, has limited my growth as a father and as a husband. And I was unwilling to, look in the mirror, dive into my past. I mean, so my wife and I, before we got married, before I became a stepdad, my wife and I dated for a few years. And one of the things that we decided to do when we kind of knew it was going to happen, when we knew we wanted to be together, is we decided to go to a marriage counselor. Now, why would you go to a marriage counselor if you're not married? Great question. Because we needed an individual in between us to help us deal with our problems. See, my wife and I both came from childhoods that were a little risky. A lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, a lot of partying, not a lot of parental supervision. Parents loved us for sure, but not a lot of parental supervision. So, they say that you become like the five people that you spend most of your time with. For my wife and I, it wouldn't have been a far stretch for us to become alcoholics, to become addicts, to become more like our parents. And so we decided to go to marriage counseling before we were married because we wanted to have a mediator in between so we can kind of not only talk things through as a couple, but we wanted to make sure that we dealt with some of the things, childhood trauma, good, bad, right, or wrong. And, after a while of going, I really felt like I had a strong hold on it. Like I dealt with a lot of things with my mom, with my dad, with my sister, my wife as well, with dealing with stuff with her parents. So I kind of let it go. I let it fall to the wayside. And if I'm being honest with myself, I purposely left out certain things that I didn't want to deal with because I felt like they were so far in my past that they weren't going to mess with me. And I was way wrong. And the reason I'm telling you, gentlemen, this today is because sometimes we feel like we have a full grasp, like we've got a grip on life. We're trucking along, we're doing really good. But yet something is still weighing on us. Like our shoulders are heavy, right? And I can tell you that when you can look in the mirror, when you can sit down with your significant other, when you can sit down with yourself and you can be honest with yourself on the things that you really do have to pay attention to, that you have to address, that you have to try to figure out and fix, you'll learn fairly quickly that some of the things that were holding you back to progress forward into your blended family in a positive manner, the things that were holding you back are all self-inflicted wounds. They're all self-inflicted because as men, we don't want to deal with our problems. We don't have anybody to talk to really. And when we do, we don't want to sound like we're complaining. So we try to handle all of our own shit, right? We try to balance it all and it can become overwhelming. And I was overwhelmed because I felt like I had a tight grip on everything that I needed to have a tight grip on. And in reality, it was a very loose grip. And it was something that was really weighing on my mind and my shoulders and my marriage and being a father. Bottom line is that I had to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror. And I had to be honest. I had to be honest with that. I did not deal with some of the childhood shit that I needed to deal with. For me, guys, because I've always said I'd be transparent with you. For me, it was pornography. For me, it was promiscuity. Like like I said, as a kid growing up, my parents always partied, always drank, always, there was always something around, always fighting, always arguing, always bickering. And I would go over to my next door neighbor's house because that's where I found comfort. And the reason I would go over there is because the people that lived next door were always partying with my parents. So it was just a place for me to escape. Unfortunately for me, his place was littered and filled with porn. Now back then, this is, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. I didn't really have an idea of what it was, but I knew that it was a part of my life, and I was over there almost every single solitary day. And that's where I found comfort, right? That's where I found, and it's kind of strange for me to say that out loud, because how are you going to find comfort in a house full of porn? Well, for me, it wasn't about the porn. It was about escaping the fighting, escaping the alcohol, escaping the abuse, mentally and physically at sometimes, from my home. And that's where I found it. So fast forward to my life today, I think like most men looking at looking at porn, looking at sites where kind of fantasize, for most men, or for most people, I guess, porn can be also a really added benefit. This is something I'm learning in therapy now, that it can be an added benefit for your marriage because, helps spice things up, keep things new, etc. But for me, it was more of a deterrent, because I don't have any real connection with, like, as far as like in a sexual way towards porn. It was more like a soothing thing. So whenever I would get in a fight with my wife, or I would get in a fight with my kids, or I'd have a really bad day, I would go online and I would just find myself in a dark hole of pornography. And it started fucking with my marriage, guys, to the point where, like I said, this is episode 190, and I didn't get on this podcast for a while because I was dealing with it. And I'm telling you guys this now because I had to be honest with myself. I did not have a clear grip on it. See, when I was a kid, I want to say 11 or 12, I was abused by my babysitter. She's a female. And when I say abused, I mean in a sexual way. She, in ways that I can't fully describe, but I can tell you that it wasn't right for who I was as a kid. And then I want to know why I was so screwed up in my relationships as I grew older. And one of the reasons that it was messing with me now in my current life is because I was unwilling to open that Pandora's box, because I felt so ashamed of it. And it wasn't my fault. As an adult, I can now look back at it and say, that wasn't my fault. It wasn't my doing. And I can't let it define who I am now. And that's me being honest with myself. So I want you to ask yourself, stepdads, what are you holding on to still? What is still weighing your shoulders down? What do you need to come clean about? I can tell you it's a liberating feeling for sure, but that's the beginning. That's step one. And you have to not only be honest with yourself, but then you have to be honest with the process in order to find healing with what you're dealing with. Your wife and your kids, they want you to succeed. Guys, I promise. People are not looking for you to fail. We have to stop making up excuses in our minds and reasons to leave, or to step away, or to not give a shit. We have to stop looking for that, and we have to start dealing with our demons. And we can only do that by looking directly into the mirror and looking at ourselves and being honest. So that's what I'm hoping that I can get across to you guys today. And the reason that I shared this with you today is because it's a weight off my shoulders. It's helping me be a more patient father. It's helping me be a more loving husband. And it's because I'm no longer holding on to what I thought was a secret, right? But in reality, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret at all, because I wasn't doing anything that was gonna mess with my marriage per se. But I was still holding on to secrets, and I was holding on to sneaking away to my comfort zones, if you want to call it that. And now that it's out in the open, it's easier to deal with. It's just so much easier to deal with, especially when you have somebody on your team, for me, like my wife, who wants to see me succeed, who wants to go along this process with me, because again, it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. Okay, it's not my fault that my parents fought all the time and there was alcohol and drugs and I had to escape next door. It is not my fault that happened, but it is my responsibility as a man, leader, and father to not only address it, but to walk forward forward, completing the necessary steps in order to heal myself. So stepdads, just remember that. People don't want you to fail, and you shouldn't want yourself to fail. So if you are holding on to something, be honest with yourself. Go get some help. I promise it works. All right, guys, that's episode 190 of the show. Thank you guys very much for listening, for joining, for watching. I hope today's episode kind of brings a little bit of peace into your heart, love into your life, and less weight on your shoulders. Until next time, be well. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Listen, if you know a stepdad who is in need of any of this information, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and share this episode with them as fast as possible. Did you do it? Okay, you did it. You hit this. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Quiet on the set, please. Thank you, everybody.